What is up, guys? Happy Monday, and welcome to my first episode on the Marvel Movie Mondays or Marvel Memory Mondays, whichever title you prefer. I'm Starling Still. Welcome to Starling on Cinemas. That's Cinemas with an S. And today, for the Marvel Movie playlist, I will be giving you my review of Blade from 1999, starring Wesley Snipes. Before I begin, if you are new to this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment on the section below, and most importantly, watch. The same thing goes for if you're watching on Instagram. Now, speaking of Instagram, before we get started, let's set the record straight here. If this is your first playlist, you can go ahead and check out any other playlist that I have on my channel. And this playlist, let's make this clear, this playlist will not include the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I already have a playlist with all 23 films from the Infinity Saga on its own. So this playlist will only include Marvel movies that were not made by Marvel Studios. This includes the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy and the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the X-Men movies, Daredevil, the Blade, the original Hulk movie, and everything else, all the other goodies. So let's get to it. So, a half-mortal and half-vampire is out to avenge his mother's death and rid the world of vampires forever. The modern-day technologically advanced vampires he's going after are in search of his special blood type needed to summon an evil god who plays a key role in their plan to execute the human race, one blood at a time. Now, you could probably guess by the enthusiasm I had in the opening moments of this video that I have good things to say about this movie. I don't, but don't click away yet. Don't you click away yet. I dare you to stay on this channel. I dare you to stay on this video. Listen to what I have to say about Blade. See, the fact that we are all so used to seeing how successful Marvel films are nowadays, you know, with the whole MCU and how that franchise has dominated the box office and dominated critics and audiences over any other franchise, there are pretty high expectations for these movies, even the movies that are not in the MCU, like the X-Men films. Blade is a whole different story. See, the Marvel Cinematic Universe may be filled with the greatest Marvel stories told on screen, but 1998's Blade, which is not part of the MCU, is the movie that paved the way for the success of a lot of live-action Marvel adaptations made by other studios on the big screen, like Universal and Fox and Sony. Now, for the first Marvel blockbuster to make it to the big screen, I didn't really feel connected to the story of Marvel's Daywalker, so named because he is the only vampire that can walk in the midst of sunshine without getting burned. Now, I will say, while the action in the movie was enjoyable enough for us to get warmed up to the hype of these marvelous action sequences in later films, which are some of my favorite parts of these movies, I understand that Blade is part vampire and those are the kinds of creatures he hunts down, but the film simply lacks the basic formula that we are so used to seeing in other Marvel films, even ones that are not a part of the MCU, like the comedic substance, down-to-earth characters, and compelling narrative pieces. Now, listen, these movies that are not part of the MCU, they may not be connected, but that doesn't mean they can't be compelling. Like, each of these Marvel movies that are not made by Marvel Studios are not connected in any way. They are each their own individual, unique stories. It would be cool to see how they were connected in some way. And yes, Kevin Feige was involved in these older Marvel films pre-Marvel Studios, but I'll explain that later in a different video on this playlist. The characters. Wesley Snipes' portrayal of Blade is one of the highlights of this surprisingly underwhelming Marvel film. Blade is one of the more forgotten Marvel characters, just like Ghost Rider and Punisher. Like, I bet even in the midst of the Marvel Studios, look, I'm sorry, I'm talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but look, that's been dominating the last decade. I mean, come on. I'm not going to go through this playlist of non-MCU movies without talking about the MCU on several occasions. But anyway, I bet throughout the MCU you forgot about all these other Marvel characters that existed, like Daredevil. You may have not forgot about him if you've been watching Netflix. I know I forgot about Ghost Rider. I know I forgot about Punisher. And I know I forgot about Blade. Now, just like the comics, his mother, who is human, was bitten by a vampire. She dies, but Blade doesn't, and then grows up and goes through life killing off every vampire he can find in New York City. Now, I do have a lot of, I won't say complaints, necessary complaints, because I don't know what to say about this film that I don't necessarily like. To me, it was just simply unengaging. To me, if you like Blade, good for you. But to me, it was simply unengaging. I guess it's the fact that I don't really watch a lot of vampire movies, horror movies. But this felt more leaned on the horror side than it does on the marvelous epic side, superhero side. But if you think about it, it is ironic how the two halves of Blade's character are helping him and hunting him at the same time. See, the vampires that he is out to kill, are trying to use him to bring the blood god to reality, while humans like Whistler and Dr. Karen Jenson are here to help Blade. Now, one confusing aspect, I don't know if they explained this in the film or whatnot, but one confusing aspect in this movie is why Blade's own mother turned against him. Like that was pretty confusing. I mean, he had him. He was in her womb and she died and he came back to life. I mean, she did say she came back to life. She simply said, Blade said, "You're dead," and she said, "I'm here." But how? Now I know why she would be a vampire, because she's been affected. She got bit. But the fact that she turned on him is one of the most confusing parts of this movie, if not the most. Rotten Tomatoes gives Blade a 56% score. The usual trend of first impressions come a long way. They really do, if you think about it. But Blade, which is a less impressive entry in this Marvel movie library, doesn't deliver like most of the ones after it, but the action set pieces certainly set the stylish and awesome tone, and they help us get a feel on what big screen Marvel action looks like. So those even though it was a lot, even though I didn't enjoy a lot in this movie, I did enjoy that action. Like, you sure it was gory and bloody, but hey, and the CGI was pretty whack, but hey, everybody starts somewhere, right? Including me. But yes, for that, I will give this movie 4.5 SOs out of 10. I'm sorry. It was just very down there. It's not because it's the first. It's not because it's old. It's because, to me, it was just simply underwhelming. Like, there were some places that felt there were some plot points that did feel out of place a little, but I don't know how to explain it. It was just simply underwhelming to me. So that is my review on Blade. You can let me know what you guys think about it in the comment section below. Even if this is not a part of the MCU, and I know a lot of people who love the MCU even love non-MCU films like Ghost Rider and the Spider-Man trilogy, especially the Spider-Man trilogy. But if you tend to like Blade, good for you. But I cannot wait for all of the movies that I have coming in the next few weeks to talk about. I am so excited. This is very nostalgic for me. This is very nostalgic if you grew up in the 2000s at all, because like Blade was the first big successful Marvel blockbuster before we had X-Men, before we had Spider-Man, before we had Hulk, before we had Iron Man. Come on. Before we had all these successful Marvel superheroes turned into household names. So yes, I am very excited to be sharing and reviewing all of these older Marvel films and even Marvel movies that we've gotten for the past 19 years that were not made by Marvel Studios. So I'll see you guys tomorrow with my first episode on the Pixar playlist. I'm very looking forward to that. Y'all have a good night. See you tomorrow.